to 5 more minutes with the Big Man Alliance. I am Bookworm. You already know this. This is our new friend.
Game.
You saw him Monday on Gloom. That is if you watched it. And if you didn't watch it, shame on you. We are Wrestling Talks with the Big Man Alliance. This will be our new extra Thursday content. We are going to start by talking about current events. So, since Game is a big fan of WWE, I'll let him talk.
Friday Night SmackDown, main event, Daniel Bryan versus Randy Orton. Obviously, we've had problems between these two earlier because Triple H has turned for the worse. We finally get to see them go at it in a match where nobody can interfere. If that's what you think, you were wrong. Because, once again, we have the Devil's Worshipper, follower guys, I think that's what they call themselves, something along those lines. Interfere. The Wyatt family interferes. Papa Wyatt actually didn't come ringside, it was just his sons.
They're not a family. They're like a cult.
Yeah, I know, but
it's Bray. His name is Bray.
I don't care, call him Papa Wyatt, it sounds cool. He was on the monitor, and they interfered. You know how this works. It happens too many times. I was actually really hoping Bryan would win because he's a good wrestler. We don't see him get too many wins. And it would be good for his ego and for the fan base of WWE to see him win. But obviously he gets distracted, and Orton hits the RKO for the 3 count, and he's left devastated in the middle of the ring.
I frequent the news, the dirt sheets, if you will. A lot of people are complaining that Punk and Bryan are doing this thing with the Wyatts. There's just certain guys, and I think Punk and Bryan are at that level where no matter what happens, you're always going to be popular. I don't think anything's really going to hurt their momentum short of becoming Santino and just being comedy jobbers, which they're not going to. If anything, this is going to bring the Wyatts to a new level, which is what they need to do. Also, I mean, who better to be in the ring with and learn than the former Bryan Danielson, now Daniel Bryan, and CM Punk, who are 2 of the best wrestlers in the company. I mean, you look at what happened last year with the Shield, half of the reason that they had great matches in the beginning was because they were wrestling Daniel Bryan. And that really helped elevate them and put them in the position they are now. And also now we got CM Punk, he's been veered off, so he's going to be facing the Shield. And you have Daniel Bryan with the Wyatts. It leaves a lot of interesting storylines. The big news, of course, coming up is going to be the unification match. My thoughts on that is that I really hope that whoever wins, and then we're leading into the next year. I think this is signifying the end of the brand extension, which Cena and Orton have really, after Lesnar left, became the poster childs for their 2 respective brands. And I think going forward, I think we're going to see them start to move down the card, or at least move into positions of importance elsewhere where they don't have to have the belts all the time, and we'll start to see the new generation. Yeah, you're killing me, man. 10 years.
I will touch on this a lot. Every time we touch on these 2 holding belts, I will touch on how bad I'm tired of seeing it. And take it back to CM Punk and Bryan before I touch on the TLC. It was just, for these 2 people to become partners was just, it was in the making, because even if you look back at their indie stuff, they had a couple really good matches. You won't really recognize it besides, Daniel Bryan, his trunks and stuff, because, he doesn't have what he has now, like the beard and the hair. But you see these guys wrestle, and they get to flow a little bit more free because the WWE does put restrictions on some people. But they're just amazing matches, and it's even more amazing to see their stuff, like their promos, especially Punk.
Punk did a really awesome promo back in the day. If you watch Punk's biography DVD, they showed the IWA Mid-South with him and Hero always having their matches and stuff. There's a promo from that time. It's called the Invisible Mic promo. It's where Punk trying to cut a promo, and I can't remember, something happens with the mic, so he just throws the mic down and pretends to hold it, and it's the invisible mic. He just does a whole promo without a microphone. And when you're on the indies, you can get away with that because you have, 50 people there, and they're all going to hear you.
That's a good day.
Yeah, that's good. Trust me, I worked a lot of indie shows as security when I was training, and we were lucky, except for our 1 year event where it was our anniversary events. We had 30 people per show.
And if you YouTube, there might be a couple videos called this, but if you type in a CM Punk people person, you don't have a problem with swearing. It's a really funny video. It shows Punk in his element. Somebody shouts at the crowd at him, and he just turns and freaks out on him. Go look it up. Like, pause this video, but make sure you come back.
That's if you want to see. People always, when Daniel Bryan got signed, people are always like, "Oh, he's not going to make it. He's not charismatic. He's just a vanilla midget." Which, by the way, that term is used for like the whole indie crowd by people that are like strict WWE fans, and I think it's stupid because Antonio Cesaro is anything but a midget. Luke Harper, anything but a midget. These guys came from the indie scene. They're not midgets. Vanilla midgets were used for guys that were like cruiserweights, like Dean Malenko. And Dean Malenko was a terribly awesome
powerhouses.
Dean Malenko was an incredible wrestler, but he was very bland and he was very small.
And we can also tell we're gonna get some new signings because on the JBL and Cole show, there's this new thing that just happened with Cool Cody, #cool, #Cody. We don't use hashtags. We don't.
I don't even use Twitter.
I don't even know what Twitter is.
Isn't that what birds do?
I don't know.
Birds tweet, not people.
That's my era, so it's pretty bad that I don't use it.
I barely use Facebook. I use our Facebook to post videos. That's it.
I'm pretty guilty when it comes to the Facebook. I like people, some people though. But no, Indie's cool because it's like I don't follow Indie as much as Bookworm does, but because I grew up with the WWE. Like I used to remember hanging out with my dad.
I'm working on that.
I used to hang out with my dad and just watch Austin matches because back when I was younger, it was like one or two, but that's what happened.
I don't know if it's because I came in. I remember watching with my dad, but it was like 92, 93. It was like
I wasn't even thought of that.
It was like early. That was WCW. That was the Jim Hurt era, so we all know how horrible WCW was at the time. But it was also WWF, and then like I was like the NWO happened in like 97, so I was like 9 or 10 at that time, and so like I got to grow up in the Attitude Era as it was happening and remembering it. But since like the 2000s, I've always taken upon myself to go back and find the old stuff, like because I mean I love history in general, and I love wrestling history so much because if you go back, you can see where we are today because of where we were then. And there's a lot of stuff that I miss now, like good psychology, promos that meant something.
Less talking.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Who said that?
Talking then meant more. Like Dusty Rhodes' Hard Time promo meant more then than it would have today because there wasn't the talking that there was today.
And then there was the promo where it was, I think it was the King of the Ring, Snake versus Jake the Snake versus Austin. He's talking about you got your songs, you got your generations, you got your John 316. It's time for us. That icon. That was like started so much.
Yeah.
It went a couple months ago. Actually, I was at the Raw where Punk beat Lesnar with the camera. Like I got to see that live, and there was people still wearing 316 shirts. There was just custom. Like I'm gonna get a real into 316 shirt.
And see, that's one of the issues I have with today is that I mean, I can see the proper end game for someone like Daniel Bryan, which includes him coming in at number 1 and winning the Rumble, to like close that full circle with Shawn Michaels being his first trainer, and kind of replacing the Benoit legacy there. And yes,
Benoit warnings, future videos, they will happen because we do know it's a touchy subject, but this is a wrestling talk show. He was a great wrestler. We look at his wrestling. We don't look at I don't want to call it a mistake, but we don't look at the mistake. We don't judge him as a person like that because to us he was a wrestler.
I don't condone what he did. It was for me, who Benoit was one of my favorite wrestlers. To what he did was, I mean, it's unquestionably a thing that you can't really forgive a person for as far as like what they did. But I look at wrestling as an art form, and there's there's a lot of artists out there that did great work, but were also really bad people. So I look at the art form and try to separate it. But yeah, so it would erase that Benoit legacy a bit by having Daniel Bryan be number 1, and then he can go on and have a WrestleMania moment and win the title.
Because Bryan is an amazing wrestler, they just don't let him do it.
Speaking of Daniel Bryan being an amazing wrestler, I was going back to when he got signed. People were like, he's not going to cut it. He's vanilla. Go look up Bryan Danielson, Paul London, Dolphins. It's one of the most funniest promos you'll ever see, and it shows that Daniel Bryan had charisma way before he got signed. And it's like a lot of people never knew that. So quickly going over the current TLC card, we have the TLC Orton versus Cena for the both titles, the unified title match. We have two handicap matches. We have the Shield versus CM Punk, and we have the Wyatt family versus Daniel Bryan. I like the Shield, all right. Dean Ambrose is going to be one of the top bad guys in wrestling.
He always will.
If you go back and watch Jon Moxley promos, which was what Dean Ambrose was on the Indies, Jon Moxley, and you compare them to a Piper or Jake the Snake promo, you'll see what I mean. And then we also have this past Raw, we got the IC title match between Damian Sandow and Big E Langston. So far, it looks like a good card. There'll be a tag match thrown on there. We'll see. I know Curtis Axel and Ryback are looking for a shot, and there's a few other teams that are talking about it.
I wish Ryback wasn't the bad guy anymore, because Ryback's an amazing wrestler. Like I like the powerhouses a lot more, like, cause pretty much I can kind of like see me being one of them because I'm a bigger guy. And so powerhouses have always been my favorite wrestlers, like especially the Big Show. Like even from Paul Wright to the Big Show now, like what he stands for. Like a couple months ago when he had the feud with Triple H and everything, like the way they did that, they wrote it perfectly, and it just the way that we see Big Show wrestle versus the way that they had the feud go on, it was perfect, like top WWE. Like.
And that's a perfect segue to a segment I like to call Wrestling History 101. Game has not been watching wrestling for very long. He's very young. I've been watching wrestling for
15.
I've been wrestling for a long time. I'm really old. And I also, as I said, I like to go back in history. So I've taken on myself to teach young Game here about wrestling history. The very first match I had him watch, Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio, Halloween Havoc, for the Cruiserweight title. You like the powerhouse wrestling, but how was it to watch two of the best Cruiserweights of all time in their... Well, Rey Mysterio's prime and Eddie Guerrero's first prime, because I always say Eddie Guerrero had two primes. So this is first prime. What'd you think?
To see versus what Mysterio has today, I mean, he's old, like, not old, but for wrestling, he's old. I mean, we're getting newer and newer people, and,
he's been around for 20 plus years now.
Yeah, there was
and
no mask,
15,
and there was a mask.
That match was at least 15 years ago.
Yeah, to see a mask versus hair is crazy, because just to see, like, the stakes for masked luchadors, like, how they feel when they lose their mask, it's weird to watch, and especially when you see, you think of Guerrero as this loving guy who he wants his son, he wants custody of his son, he'll wrestle for it, he'll put everything on the line, but to see his lie, cheat, and steal tactics is crazy. Well, and that's what happened this match. And
even back then, that was back in, this was like 97 or 96 for that Halloween Havoc match. Way before, I mean, this is WCW. Cruiserweights didn't have characters. They were just guys that went out and wrestled.
They were the fillers.
But you know what? It worked for WCW. It got people in. They were a 3-hour show. It got people in the first hour, and then they had the storylines after that. But Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio were just two amazing wrestlers, and they went out there and they had a luchador-style match, but with an American flair, and it allowed people to really get into that style of wrestling. And if you go back and watch WCW at the time, you had Psychosis, Juventud Guerrero, Eddie Guerrero, no relation there. Psychosis, I believe I already said Psychosis.
Yeah,
Rey Mysterio, Chavo Guerrero Jr. You also had guys like La Parka, and then you had Dean Malenko, Billy Kidman, Ultimo Dragon. These guys, they carried the wrestling portion of the show. And while Sting's my favorite wrestler, he's not the greatest technician. He's a powerhouse wrestler. You had guys like Ric Flair on the top, but he was getting old at that time. This is 20 years ago. He was already getting old, and you had guys like that on top. But these young guys, and then you had guys like Benoit and Diamond Dallas Page were coming up, and they were like in the U.S. title hunt. And you had a lot of good backbone wrestlers, and it allowed for a lot of different style clashes and good style clashes as well. But yeah, like I said, the style of wrestling there. You don't get to see it that much today. It's just not something that happens.
There's a really the WWE does kind of throw a ankle weight on the luchador wrestlers. The most free flow you really see now is the Matadors. I think that Los Matadores.
A quick point on that. Sin Cara came back on Raw, but it's not the. It's actually Hunucio or Hunucio, however you say that. Hunako.
He was.
And come on, he was the Black Sin Cara a while ago when Sin Cara first got injured. There's a lot of talks of whether or not they're going to be letting Sin Cara go in January when his contract's up and having Hunucio continue. Because actually, the problem with Sin Cara, Mystico, as he's known in Mexico, is that they didn't put him in development. He never learned English, and he didn't take the time to fit his style in with the WWE style. And so that's why he's always injured, because the guys don't know how to wrestle his style. That's why the other guys botch his stuff so much, because they don't know how to work that style. And if they had taken the time to say, hey, go in development for a few months, not because you're a bad wrestler, but because you got to learn this style.
That's
even Alberto Del Rio was in development for a few months so that he can learn the American style. And it allows, you don't have to water him down, but it allows him to work with guys that can work that style. And Hunucio actually knew that style already, and he was a better Sin Cara than the actual Sin Cara.
Yeah, well, really now all he would have to wrestle, like, we saw him with Mysterio, he would, Los Matadores, he could wrestle him, but,
There's a couple guys in development right now. There's a guy, he's going by Calypso. He was, I can't remember his indie name right now, that's pretty good and wouldn't wrestle that style. But the problem is they've put so much work into him, and he's always injured, and it's not paying off. They want to do a Sin Cara versus Rey match at WrestleMania because they want to set the biggest indoor amount of people wearing masks at one time for a match, which is cool, but I would say do it with Nucio because Rey Mysterio is always injured too. You don't want someone else that's going to get injured at the same time, so do that. Speaking of development, by the way, I want to bring up a real quick thing. Sammy Calhoun just debuted his new character in development. He got signed a while ago. He's now going by Solomon Crow. It looks amazing. He's doing an evil hacker gimmick. He came out during a match, actually with the guy who's going by Calypso. He came out after the match, and all the lights went out. And when they came back on, he was standing in the ring, and Calypso was laid out, and he had like an iPad, and he pushed a couple buttons, and the lights went back out, and he left the ring.
That's awesome.
And I'm just excited to see what's going to happen. Like once he gets called up, if he gets to keep that, that'd be cool.
If the WWE would do more stuff like that, because they really do have a creepy kind of, they always have a couple luchadors. They always have the really big powerhouses, and then they always have people like Kane and Undertaker who are the undead. They need
more characters.
Yeah, they need a more variety. Like let's see, let's bring back the old schools like the High Flyers, Christian Edge.
As long as we don't go too far back and we get Plumbers and Mantar again. the early 90s WWF New Generation, where everyone has a gimmick that they actually have a day job.
Let's not have people who went to camp together as kids.
Yeah.
Even though they're amazing people.
The Solomon Crow character can be awesome when he gets called up. Sami Zion's a guy. He was El Generico in the Indies. He's going to be great when he gets called up. He's already pulling off great matches. Really brief quickly. We're running short on time, so I want to run over two things. TNA, we just had the semifinals, so we know the last two guys in the title matches are going to be Magnus and Jeff Hardy, and it's called a Dixieland match. It's classic TNA kind of booking. The matches, it's a cage match. They have to get out of the cage, go up the ramp, climb a ladder, and grab the belt. So it's like a ladder match combined with a cage match, which, by the way, can work. We did that in SPW when I was training, and it works really well when booked right. So it can work out really well. So that's on tap for next week. Also, look out, AJ Styles has not yet signed a new contract, so we don't know what's going to go on with that.
They need to sign him, or the WWE needs to pick him up.
Sadly, I don't think he'd do very well in WWE. He's already pushing 40.
On that note, talking about what we want to see with AJ Styles, let's go into game section. What we want to see.
Dude, we only have like 5 minutes.
Yeah, but it only takes us 5 minutes because I'll do when you do one.
Okay, fine.
I would like to see at TLC. I'm probably not the only one because I did see a picture of this, and it was amazing. I want to see somebody win. I don't care who wins the title of unification. It could be Orton because he's a good wrestler. It could be Cena. I want to see somebody win. They hold up the titles, and then we hear pyro, and then break the wall down. Because it would be amazing to see one of the only other people to have both titles at once come back and congratulate or code break somebody, because I would love to see Orton take a code breaker.
What I'm guessing is going to happen with that is that whoever wins, they'll have a rematch at Royal Rumble, and then of course the winner of the Royal Rumble will put on forward from that. What I'd like to see is, I don't even know right now. I know what's happening in TNA up until next month, so I can't really say what I'd like to see there. WWE, I just like to, like I said, my plan was Daniel Bryan winning the Rumble from number 1 and then winning the title. It's the only way that whatever's happened since SummerSlam makes sense. So, on the final note, I'm going to go over Ring of Honor one time. They have Final Battle coming up here in about a week or so. The current card right now, going off the top of my head, so forgive me. I didn't look it up beforehand. We have the world title match is going to be Adam Cole versus Jay Briscoe. I believe that might be more than one person in that match. I can't remember now. I know that the tag team match is going to be reDragon for the tag champions. Oh man, I should have looked it up beforehand because I can't remember who they're facing. That actually is the multi-man match. I can't remember who all the tag teams in that. I do know that the big thing was going to be the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team match, which is the IWGP from New Japan Wrestling Tag Champions versus. It was going to be the American Wolves. So it was going to be their send-off, but Davey Richards, being the jerk that he is, basically alienated himself from the locker room, and so they're going to. Nigel McGuinness has promised a big surprise that won't disappoint. I know Matt Hardy put up a video claiming that he should be that guy, but we'll see how that works out. Surprises in wrestling tend to not go very well, but we'll see how it works.
Still wrestle?
Yeah, he wrestles Independence.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
His brother, because I remember the reason they both left the WWE is because they wrestled each other. Drugs, and the story they wrote was they had to wrestle for their career.
Yeah,
I remember that. It was like a long time ago.
Yeah, Matt left a few years after Jeff quit, and then got busted for drugs right after that. But yeah, Matt wrestles.
Don't they all?
Yeah. Matt wrestles Independence now, and so he was wanting to come back to Ring of Honor for that. But anyway, that's all for us today. Hope you liked our debut episode. And next week, hopefully, we'll have a special guest indie wrestler friend of mine, who none of you will know unless you follow his career over here where we are. But he is a good friend of mine, and we'll hopefully have some of his insights next week as well.
Remember, kids, never leave home without your singlets.